Hi and welcome. My name's Jay Myers. I'm the CEO of NGen Canada, a not-for-profit industry-led group or company that's leading Canada's advanced manufacturing supercluster. I'm really glad you can join us today. This is the first of our project podcasts on our project podcast playlist, and really glad today. I can't think of any project that I would like to start off more with here than our project with Aspire Food Group. And I'm really delighted to have Mohammed Ashour, who is the co-founder and CEO of Aspire, join me today, talk a little bit about the project. And particularly, this is the great great reason that I'm proud to highlight Aspire first of all, is that it's just been recognized by UNESCO as one of the top 10 AI applications in the world in pursuit of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I'm going to be asking Mohammed about why the project achieved that recognition and what the project's all about in a minute. But first of all, a little bit about NGen. As I said, we are the not-for-profit organization that is running Canada's advanced manufacturing supercluster, and our mission, we're committed to building world-leading advanced manufacturing capabilities in Canada for the benefit of Canadians. We do that in a number of ways. We promote our great capabilities, our research capabilities, technology capabilities, our manufacturing capabilities that we have across the country, some of the best kept secrets in the world. But we promote those across Canada, around the world. We work to connect the dots, to build partnerships, build collaboration across research and technology and manufacturing, really to develop unique solutions for manufacturing that are valuable, that are world leading, and that have great commercial potential. We support workforce development, and we support the ability or enhance the ability of companies to manage their digital transformation in the next generation of manufacturing capabilities. But some of the most exciting work that we do is actually provide funding and support world-leading projects in advanced manufacturing. And Mohammed, that's why I'm so glad that you're here. Tell us a little bit about Aspire, and tell us a little bit about the project that you're running with NGen.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Jay. It's a pleasure to be here. So, in a nutshell, we are pioneers in insect agriculture at scale. To kind of unpack that a little bit, about 8 years ago, I was a medical student at McGill University when I came across a business competition called the Holt Prize. And the whole purpose behind this competition was to inspire entrepreneurs to build a new generation of businesses that have the capacity to genuinely improve the world by solving some major social challenge. And in 2013, the challenge was food security. And so my co-founders and I at the time were still students, and we started doing some research to understand, how do you tackle this long-term, very significant global problem where we're going to see a significant rise in population and appetite. At the same time, we're going to see a shrinkage in resources with which to produce food. And while that is a concern, the opportunity is, if you can come up with a way to produce a lot more food using a fraction of the amount of resources, you could have a tremendous and outsized impact on solving this problem. And so one of the things that struck us early on was the realization that there is, in fact, a source of livestock that has been consumed for millennia that represents a significant part of the protein intake of many cultures around the world, and that is actually insects. Now, of course, growing up in Canada, this was still a relatively foreign concept, and something that many of us didn't necessarily grow up with the idea of insects as food, whether it's food for ourselves or even necessarily food for our pets. But it was a very compelling thought, and it was worth really researching and understanding better. And as we traveled around the world and visited countries where insect agriculture, whether it's insects being fed to humans or to pets, was widely practiced, one thing that really struck us was how much this industry could tremendously benefit from automation, technology, and advanced manufacturing. So in many parts of the world where insects are consumed, insects are typically hand harvested from the wild. Now, this is an incredibly unscalable model. And if you don't believe me, try catching 1,000 grasshoppers and you'll realize just how difficult that is from a manual labor perspective. And so for us, what was really exciting was this notion that what the insect itself as a biological entity is incredibly efficient at converting what it consumes into protein. So the question was not, do we have a really exciting candidate organism that can be a great conduit for protein production? That was obvious, and that's true, and that is what like an insect like a cricket could do. But the question is, can we build an entire infrastructure and supply chain and production system around this? And so our thought was, if we can take advantage of vertical farming, indoor climate controlled agriculture, robotics, and large data capturing, along with machine learning and artificial intelligence, we could build an indoor climate resilient protein production system that can be theoretically deployed anywhere in the world. When you can farm insects year round, you've effectively unlocked the potential of this protein for so many generations to come. And so we ultimately won that prize, and with it, the seed capital to launch our business. And since then, we've invested well over $100 million in pursuing very advanced research development and commercialization towards bringing to life the promise of this industry. And we're actually just putting in the final touches on our facility here in London, Ontario, which is the world's largest fully automated cricket production facility anywhere.
So fully automated, lots of technology, lots of digital technology, artificial intelligence. How does this all work with crickets?
Yeah, so when you think about crickets, I mean, one of the challenges is obviously you're farming crickets inside these habitats or these bins. So think of it as a tote that you put crickets inside. Now, what's remarkable is this really mimics the natural life history of these insects, because they are nocturnal. So they prefer the dark. They like to kind of cluster around other insects. But the challenge is, how do you bring food and water to these insects? How do you manage the temperature and humidity levels, given that these insects can't actually regulate their own body temperature? So how do you make sure that that is stable? And how do you look at cues in the biology of these insects to tell you when it's the right time to harvest, when it's the right time to, add or reduce some of the components within these bins? And so what you're talking about is this massive module, this huge vertical farm with thousands of sensors that are every single day collecting millions and millions of data points about these crickets. And to maybe unpack that a little bit better, let's think of just any form of regular outdoor livestock or even crop agriculture. If you're a farmer who's, let's say, harvesting, your yield of corn this year, and you notice that you've had an amazing season, your yield went up 25%. While that's a remarkable achievement, the challenge you're now facing is figuring out what exactly led to that increase. Because if you can figure that out, you can repeat that every year and see that become your new baseline. But if it was a fluke, it's very hard to replicate that success. And the challenge is, even if you're an incredibly data-driven farmer who captures a rich amount of data about, the seed, the soil, the different, pesticides and the different products that you use, the temperature, the humidity, understanding the data is one thing, but being able to actually influence the environment is another, right? So I may know that I saw an increase in temperature for a week that was really useful, but I can't control the sun. I can't ask the sun to be nice to me this next season. These are things that are out of your hands. So when you farm outdoors, there's very little you can control about the habitat and the environment. When you farm indoors, you control everything. So not only are you getting all this data that is incredibly robust and reliable, because there's not a lot of noise, there's not a lot of confounding variables, but you can now use that data to manipulate and optimize the environment better. And when you're doing this at a massive scale, when you're collecting something like 30 million data points a day, it becomes not only tedious, virtually impossible for even a large number of data scientists to sift through this data to identify the correlations that are needed to optimize your production system. And so that's where machine learning becomes an incredibly valuable tool, because you can now take this data and you can apply applied artificial intelligence to it and identify correlations in the data that are obvious, but even more excitingly, non-obvious correlations. So what do I mean by that? An obvious correlation would be if we change the humidity, let's say this month, and we see an increase or reduction in temperature or in yield while holding all else constant, right? you can pretty easily say, okay, well, humidity, that's obvious, environment, temperature, these are things that impact the growth of crickets or their metabolism rate. But a non-obvious example would be, let's say, in one section of our production facility, which happens to be near offices, for example, there's a lot of ambient noise being generated by people in the office. And it turns out that crickets being harvested out of that section are lower in yield or lower in metabolism. So that's a non-obvious correlation. It's not something that a data scientist, you're just going to be looking at temperature, humidity, and going after those obvious things. So AI is very useful in helping you both comb through a large amount of data to find correlations within it, but also to identify non-obvious correlations in the data that can really help you unlock tremendous insights. And that's what we've been able to take advantage of at this scale within our facility.
So it sounds like AI is just, you're implementing that to look at all sorts of data right across the facility, and not only the care and the breeding of the crickets itself, but just everything to do with the automation and the output as well. And that has been recognized by UNESCO as one of the top 10 AI applications in the world. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's really exciting. One of the things that's really been a huge momentum shift for us, having come to Canada when we first announced that and broke ground here about 1.5 years or 2 years ago now to build our facility, was recognizing that we really cut our teeth and built our core competency around the biology of understanding how to breed these insects at scale. What we really aren't as a company is we're not an AI company per se. We're not an IoT company that collects a lot of data. So what does this mean? It means that given the ambition involved in this project, which is tremendously multidisciplinary and requires so many domain expertise technologies to be integrated at an incredibly high level, and in some cases at pioneering, never been done before levels, that we would have to partner with, subject matter experts in these different areas, right? And what was really remarkable about the NGen program is it effectively facilitated and became the catalyst for having conversations with some of these potential partners. And so one of the partners that we identified was an existing investor in Aspire, TELUS. TELUS, of course, is widely known by most people as a mobile carrier here in Canada, but of course, they do far more than just provide cell phone plans. One of the things TELUS is very capable in is in the area of Internet of Things and connected devices and connected homes. And so we tapped TELUS's expertise in helping us build out this infrastructure network of IoT sensors throughout our facility that are going to capture this data along with Swift Labs. But capturing data is one thing, as we talked about, but the next step is then taking that data and really using AI to figure out what to do with it. And in this regard, we partnered with Darwin AI, a company based out of Waterloo, Ontario, that really has developed this capability around explainable AI. And it's an enterprise solution that effectively provides us a platform that enables us to identify not just where the correlations are, but what is the justification behind why those correlations make sense. And so this partnership with Darwin AI was recently recognized with UNESCO under the auspices of the United Nations as one of the top 10 examples of projects in the world that have a tremendous potential to address sustainable development goals. When I left medical school to start Aspire, I was leaving a career that was, in and of itself driven by my personal passion to serve people and to do something that I thought would have a tremendous benefit on humanity. And so the Hulk Prize, all that did was it took that desire, that passion, that ambition, and just gave us a much bigger opportunity that could impact millions of people's lives, which is very directly hand in hand aligned with SDGs. So Aspire's mission is addressing global food security while reducing environmental impact and waste, while improving our footprint in terms of things like climate change, all the while creating opportunities and jobs that never existed before, right? And so from the perspective of any business, it's not enough that you're using technology or you're building something exciting. There's a broader question of how is this advancing the needle for humanity? And how is this leading to progress that isn't just measured in dollars and cents, but is measured in quality of life as well? And so we're super thrilled that that we were recognized in this regard. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't state very plainly that we would have not achieved this without NGen, both by facilitating the opportunity for us to have met a Darwin AI, but also for having provided significant funding and support for the project that has led to this success.
No, well, listen, it's congratulations to you. That's a really remarkable achievement. And from what I gather, only one of two projects in all of North America that have been recognized like this, and the other one was with NASA.
That's right. Yeah, it's a pretty cool company.
Yeah.
So a really, really exciting way to kick off 2022 for us, for sure.
For sure. Now, you were talking about contributing to food security here, and what I gather, Mohammed, is that the project's not only about producing high quality protein at the facility that you're building just near London. It's also using this facility as a demonstration center and looking at opportunities to replicate that in other countries where maybe crickets are a little bit more abundant.
100%. And this is why from day one, our design by its very nature had to be modular, right? When we're thinking about building this facility, we're really thinking about future proofing this and building something that can be climate resistant, geographically agnostic, and incredibly resilient in even the harshest geographies in the world. And so what inspired us to launch this business was this recognition that there are, we live in a bipolar world where on the one hand, you have 1 billion people who live in poverty and who don't have adequate food that is safe, nutritious, and healthy. And on the other hand, you have over 2 billion people who are suffering from obesity, diabetes, and other morbidities associated with a different form of malnourishment, which is, of course, the overconsumption of calories that are tremendously harmful for our bodies. And for us, we feel that we are contributing a solution that can help rebalance that equation, right? By making a protein source abundantly available at an affordable price point. The problem is for you to produce a protein source and sell it at a profit in some of the poorest parts of the world, you must have massive economies of scale such that your unit economics can work at that level and still be profitable. And therein lies the paradox, right? Sometimes to get scale, you need to get a lot of funding, and to get funding, you need to prove that you have customers, and to get customers, you need scale, right? So it's this vicious feedback loop. But I think for us, what has really been always successful is centering on this recognition that our long-term objective really is addressing the issue of hunger for populations around the world, and in the process also having a significant positive and environmental impact as well.
Well, I think it's a great example of how advanced manufacturing can contribute to some of the big social, environmental challenges that we all face today. But at the same time, as you say, lots of innovation challenges, lots of business challenges that have to be met along the way. And you've gone from vision to the successful development of a project now with global recognition, the development of a fantastic company. But that hasn't come easy. You mentioned funding. You're looking for to build a team. You've developed not only a customer base, but a group of suppliers and innovation partners, and also found funding for this. Tell us a little bit about that journey. Because we all often talk about innovation and entrepreneurship, but there's an awful lot of hard work along the way.
No, absolutely. I mean, of course, it has to begin with dreaming big. I think what we have in Canada is an incredible platform and an incredible opportunity to be world leaders. And I say that because you're talking to somebody who 8 years ago didn't have an entrepreneurial bone in his body, right? I never ran a lemonade stand. I was a science student who did an undergrad in life science, a master's in neuroscience. I wanted to be a surgeon. But what we have is an incredible platform where if you really, really think outside the box and dream really big, magic starts to happen. I think it first has to begin with, being deeply passionate and having strong conviction in an underlying vision, not strategy, vision. And I say that, and I distinguish between vision and strategy because our vision always is going to be addressing food security and food sustainability. The strategy could evolve. This is what startups are all about. They're about pivoting, right? Changing your tactics, changing your approach to market, changing your product, even iterating on your product numerous times. The business model that we pitched at the semifinals of the Hulk Prize is nothing like the business model we presented at the finals, nothing like the business we presented when we got our Series A, and now where we are today. The common denominator, the thing that hasn't changed, is the vision. But the business model has had to be tweaked over the years. So one, you have to be, I would say, relatively dogmatic about your vision. And that means you have to be passionate and have real conviction in it. But you have to be extremely flexible when it comes to thinking about how to go to market. And you have to be really responsive to data from the market, right? So if you have an iteration of a product and you're not getting traction with customers, investors don't really necessarily believe in it. There are odd examples where an entrepreneur can just continue sort of soldiering on and ultimately proving everybody wrong. That is the exception and not the rule. The rule is, if your customers aren't buying it, if your investors aren't buying it, if your employees aren't really sure it's going to work, chances are you should probably, go back to the drawing board. So I think that's another, key ingredient. A big part of all of the above, though, is, of course, having the resources. Now, you might have a business model where you can be profitable on day one and you don't need outside capital. And again, that's wonderful. That is not the business model we chose. We chose an incredibly capital-intensive business model. And that's because we chose not just to build a business, but effectively to set up the infrastructure of an entire industry that doesn't even exist. Insect agriculture is just not a thing. I mean, it definitely wasn't 10 years ago. Now there's real players, there's real dollars, there's real R&D centers. But 10 years ago, this was non-existent. And so you have to not only build the infrastructure for your business, you have to also build the research infrastructure for your industry. There's regulatory things that you have to address. So part of that is aligning your business model with the right investment model. When you know that your business is capital intensive, well, there's only so much equity you can give out. And so you have to start getting creative about thinking of ways to draw in capital, whether that is, offtake agreements with customers where they prepay you for some of it if they really desire your product, or, looking at opportunities for grant funding, whether it's dilutive or non-dilutive, looking for opportunities for loans, thinking about how do you get some traction with some of your suppliers and perhaps get some support in that way. But that is a critical aspect of the journey. But the most important part of all of the above is really the people that you bring to the table. The early employees, the mid-stage employees, the late-stage employees, everybody adds value at a different stage in the company. Some people will stay with you for the entire journey. Some people will only be there for a period. And when you kind of get beyond a certain scale, it's no longer exciting for them. And they prefer that earlier stage when it was only 15 of you inside an office and everything was super intimate. But you have to really invest in bringing the best talent your money can afford. One of the biggest mistakes I've made in the early days was, you intuitively think, well, we don't have a lot of money, so instead of hiring somebody world-class, I want to just hire somebody that we can afford. And so you end up trying to be budget conscious with your capital, and you end up hiring, let's say, a B player or whatever, right? And this is this is just to state things plainly, right? There are people who can add value in different capacities. But if you're trying to build a world-class company, you need a world-class team. And if you can't afford, the cash it takes to hire somebody because they're too expensive, you need to figure out other ways to entice them, whether it's with equity or with other incentives in the picture. And I think that that's an incredible part of the equation. When you have a world-class team, you start developing world-class products. And when you do that, you start attracting world-class customers and investors. So it actually pays for itself to really build the company in its heart and its soul with the right people from the get-go.
No, that is good advice, and I know a lot of people on your team, and it is a great team you've put together. But you're talking this fully automated facility, and yet you're looking for an awful lot of people to come and work with you. How easy is that?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting experience. I mean, I think the last 2 years obviously have been profound just in terms of what's happened around the world, and how it's going to change things for years, if not decades to come. Obviously, nobody expected that we would go from 2 years of people massive unemployment to all of a sudden having like what is arguably the lowest unemployment rates on record, and companies fighting and offering signing bonuses for labor positions, right? Which is a wonderful development. That's a great thing to see. But it obviously means that now you have to really compete for talent. And you can do it one of two ways. It can become a bidding war. And ultimately, in the end of the day, the tech companies like the Apples and the Googles will just pay massive salaries you can never match, and eventually you're priced out of being able to hire people. Or you can focus on the other determinants and factors that actually drive people to join companies. Mm-hmm. And while cash is an important component, it's only one component. People come to join companies for the culture. People come join companies for the mission and what it is that is being accomplished, for the challenge, for the stimulation, for the recognition. So I think for us, we've been putting a lot of emphasis into that. Now, what's exciting about our business is the point you acknowledge, which is on the one hand, we're fully automated, so we don't have a ton of labor in our production. But on the other hand, we are hiring a lot of people because all of this automation requires highly skilled people to run it, whether it's engineers or data scientists or IT people. In terms of R&D, I mean, 10 years ago, if you were an entomology PhD student and you were thinking about graduation, you effectively had one of two options: either to continue in academia and teach in a university, go down a tenure track, or you went and worked for a company to figure out how to help them kill insects more efficiently in a pesticide type of environment. What's exciting is now we've created a whole host of new jobs that didn't exist a decade ago. You're looking for entomologists and research technicians that are looking for ways to optimize feed for crickets, that are looking for ways to improve the feed conversion efficiency, that are trying to identify how do we create a habitat and an environment that is best suited to the biological requirements of these insects. And that's just one type of insect. As we start exploring other insects with other market applications, that's only going to balloon. And it's not just jobs we're creating at our own company. For every one job we create, there's so many indirect jobs that are also created. So we have partnerships with Western University and Guelph, and all these universities are now hiring grad students and doing research supporting our infrastructure. There's, if you look at CFIA and FDA and all these regulatory bodies, now they are hiring people who can, advance the files of insect agriculture, because this is now a thing, the same way that a lot of alternative proteins have become. So when you create an ecosystem and a new industry, yes, it's very expensive, and we talked about that already, but the impact it can have can be seismic, and I think that's what we're starting to see now, and it's super exciting.
No, that's great. I think one of the key things in attracting young people into the whole field of advanced manufacturing, and it certainly is the case with Aspire, is that come and join us because you can really make a difference today. It's clearly not just about money.
Absolutely.
So, Mohammed, you're in the high quality protein business. There are other insect farms out there, insect processors. And there's, of course, especially in Western Canada, a whole industry being built up about new proteins. How are you differentiating yourself from some of those initiatives and in those companies?
Yeah, for sure. I think that when you think of your key differentiators when it comes to a protein source, you're looking obviously at the nutritional quality itself. You're looking at the reliability and the consistency of production, and you're looking at your ability to scale. So one of the biggest challenges, let's take the pet food industry for a second. One of the biggest challenges in the pet food industry is, ironically, a very positive development, which is that over the last decade, there's been this huge shift in what we can call the humanization of pets. The pet is no longer this adorable creature that greets you when you come home. The pet is now a member of the household, and for most households, honestly, the favorite child. And so what this means is there's a very intense devotion to treating your pet now as if it is, in fact, a member of your family. And that has a very wide-ranging series of implications. For example, now you no longer, a lot of millennial pet parents don't want to feed their pets stuff out of a can that is the result of byproducts of human food. They want to feed their pets what they themselves consume. So they want fresh salmon, they want, fresh lamb, or New Zealand, locally sourced organic, venison, all of which is, again, benevolent at face value, but it does produce two very significant challenges that the pet food industry today is deeply wrestling with. The first is there are certain protein sources that you just simply can't produce beyond a certain scale. You can only grow deer or venison in certain numbers of geographies and up to certain levels, and that's it. You've tapped the capabilities. You can't farm deer indoors. You can't farm deer using vertical farming. Like, there's just real limitations on how much you can devote in terms of farmland and agricultural resources to the production of this protein source. So what this means is as customer demand increases, let's say for venison, there comes a ceiling point beyond which you can't supply this protein anymore. And all of a sudden, the venison protein space has now vacated a whole bunch of market share that they can't fulfill. So scale is a real challenge that a lot of suppliers deal with. Just to put that into context, when we first started being approached by pet food manufacturers, the first question that always was asked of us wasn't, tell us about the attributes or the first question is, what level of production are you capable of, and how quickly can you scale? Because if you're not able to produce, thousands of tons a month, this conversation is not worth having. Because why would we go start selling this product in market, getting our customers excited about it, and then seeing this huge spike of demand that we can't fulfill? That's just doing nothing for the market. It harms our brand. So unless we know you have the capability to switch on a switch and scale almost effectively on demand, it's not interesting to us. So scale is a huge benefit we have compared to the vast majority of other protein sources because of how we can modularly grow and how quickly we can expand our production footprint. But the other aspect is consistency. So one of the challenges with a lot of, and we've seen all the recalls, all of the different, health issues and diseases and microbial issues that occasionally afflict a lot of plants that are, producing livestock, is how do you produce a product that is consistent, that is quality controlled, that has a pretty good shelf stability? And again, when you apply advanced manufacturing and robotics and, coding at every single level and sensors at every single level in your facility that track everything from the food that goes into your product to the water, to the level of humidity, the story we are able to tell our customers, whether it's a pet food manufacturer or a human food consumer packaged goods brand, is we can give them incredible traceability into everything that went into producing that very batch of crickets that they're using. We can tell them exactly what food they ate on what day, where it came from, what was the composition. That is an incredibly powerful value-added feature that, again, a lot of other protein sources just can't achieve that level of granularity. And it's helpful not just because it's on trend and it's something customers enjoy. It's also helpful from a recall perspective. Let's say you do have an unfortunate event where you must recall a product. Having this level of granular data allows you to very surgically diagnose exactly where the issue is and then quarantine and solve the problem, as opposed to having to basically, potentially get rid of all of your inventory and disrupt your entire manufacturing process.
So you've got a very, very complex technology infrastructure that you're putting in place. You need people to be able to manage that. And manage the data that you're generating. You've talked about scale, you've talked about speed and responsiveness. So when do you see production coming on stream, and what are the next steps for Aspire here?
Yeah, so our facilities construction is now complete. So we're beginning the commissioning phase now. The equipment's being installed. All of the different systems are being integrated to work together. In fact, just today we had our very first pinhead cricket hatch in the facility, which is a pretty exciting moment for all of us here. We expect that we'll begin production in a meaningful scale this summer, and we'll start shipping to customers late summer, about Q3 timeframe. And the expectation is for us to ramp up production and achieve, nameplate production by either end of this year or early next year at the latest. So that's where we are as far as the current facility. Now, as far as next steps, what's tremendously exciting is the ability to then scale this process up very quickly, right? So we've already accounted for 90% of the production of this facility before shipping a single cricket out the door. We already are having a conversation about facility number 2. And the model for how we build facility number 2, do we want to necessarily build and operate it? Do we partner with a customer who wants to put up the capital and co-locate it with their own processing plant? So there's some really exciting dialogue happening around that, but there is an inherent flexibility to the business model that allows us to scale with some degree of efficiency. The other thing that's really exciting for me long-term is if you really think about what we've accomplished, at its very essence, the facility we have in London is a proof point for the fact that we have created an advanced manufacturing system for the production of insects at scale. Now, the candidate insect in this facility happens to be a cricket, and the market happens to be protein. But there are over 3 million species of insects in the world, each of which is a source of some unique ingredient or superpower. So we know that crickets are a great source of protein. We know that bees are a great source of honey. We know that silkworms are a great source of silk. What if we can have this platform allow us to match certain insects with certain industries to create and unlock raw materials that can be useful in so many different industries? So now your vision expands beyond just crickets and protein, and you're now thinking, well, listen, I have this scalable protein production system that can be dropped anywhere in the world. What if we can identify an insect, for example, that we know can be useful in plastic recycling and partner with a large bottling manufacturer who puts up the capital to set up a facility to raise a particular type of beetle that is very useful in the plastic recycling system? Or what if you have an insect that can be used for vaccine development because of certain types of cells or materials that it generates? So there's this broader, longer term vision to think of really us as an enabling technology for the production of insects at scale to serve different markets and different customers.
Well, listen, the future sounds so exciting. I just about lost my breath there, and as you were explaining. But look, our team at NGen is so excited to be supporting this project. I think there are all sorts of opportunities, and we pride ourselves as being a bit like a wet T-shirt. We stick with you all the way through the commercialization process, and just delighted to be working with you and all of your team, Mohammed, on this project.
Thank you so much. And it's really been a pleasure working with you. And I have to emphasize the point, and this goes back to your earlier question about, what did it take to build something like this? The famous adage that it takes a village to raise a child. Well, that's if you're raising a child. If you're trying to build an entire industry, think of what you need. And so if you're an entrepreneur thinking of launching something that could be the precursor to the establishment of a new industry, you must understand that it's going to take way more than your cap table and your investors and your team to build it. And finding the right partners along that journey, and the right funding model, the right supporters, the right government support, all of it is essential. We could not be where we are if we didn't have the right support we did from the government, from NGen, from the private sector, from the public sector, from researchers, from universities, from regulators. It takes all of the above to have to work. And so inherently, you must be a very collaborative business, but also you have to be successful in having the right partners. And, having had some experience in the past where we've built partnerships that weren't really symmetrical, and where one party kind of gets benefit and the other one doesn't, we've really come to appreciate the quality of the partnership we've had with NGen. And it goes back to, I'm sure when people were in school, when you had that group project, whenever you had a team of people that everybody carried their weight, it was delightful. But when you had a group project where you had other warm bodies, but you had to do all the heavy lifting, it wasn't a very pleasant experience. And I think for us, finding partnerships is required, but making sure the partners have the right alignment, share the right vision, and have that same entrepreneurial spirit is key. And so it's been a real pleasure working with you and everybody at the NGen team. And this couldn't have been possible without your support.
No, thanks a lot, Mohammed. And listen, congratulations, all the best on your commercialization efforts. We'll be coming back, I'm sure, later on to see how things are going. But all the very best, and I'm sure that we'll be hearing a lot more about Aspire in the near future. So thanks for joining me, and thank you everybody who's looking in. Join me for the next podcast playlist episode from Next Generation Manufacturing Canada. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Jay.